Good morning. Good afternoon, more like it. Firstly, I'd like to thank everyone, panelists, and everyone here for taking the time to be a part of the event. To give you a quick background, a few of you have participated at FFCC before. The idea behind our conferences is to ensure that we are able to promote three key pillars, which is learning, networking, and collaborating. And the number one being learning, which essentially is about bringing together and giving everyone an equal opportunity to, learn best practices from the industry of sorts, which is where the deep dive series was born. So we do deep dive series in different aspects. One being marketing, supply, procurement, and of course, there's no restaurant that's complete without a chef. And that's one of the reasons we said we should definitely do something dedicated to the community. And the idea is to, again, bring you together, give you an opportunity to network. We have made announcements. I know people are coming here, but it's a bit on the inside, and I apologize for that. But I'm very confident it's going to get busy very soon. And thank you, everyone. I'd like to thank our panelists and speakers for being part of the event, giving us this opportunity to host you, and more importantly, share your with the attending delegates as well. So I hope you have a productive day. Thank you very much. If you need anything, we're going to be around and we're happy to assist. Have a lovely day.
Thank you, sir. The topic of the discussion for today would be the balancing act: creativity, consistency, and meeting expectations under pressure. The panel consists of Mr. Andres Gonzalez, Managing Director for Conceptual, Chef Ali Yazdi, founder of Slaw, House of Slaw and Slaw and More, Chef Devesh Dubey, Regional Head Chef from MAF Majidal Fatim, Chef John Rogers, Director of Operations from Tia Restaurants, and Chef Taryn Lee Green, Chef and co-founder of Nayu Meals. Carry on, gentlemen, ladies.
Right. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. It looks like we have a very select group of people here today, which is great. We have a panel full of very talented and very successful chefs. And today we're going to be talking about the balancing act between exercising creativity and some of the pressures that come with working in a restaurant environment. We have another 44 minutes. I think we'll take it slow and we'll give you some quality insights into what makes these four superstars a superstar. So we're going to start with Taryn and Devesh. And I wanted to ask you, obviously working in a culinary environment, how can we maintain high levels of creativity while dealing with operational pressures and operational expectations? Maybe we start with you, Taryn.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, for me, it's about synergy and being ahead of the game. So knowing what's coming up, working with the various departments, be it procurement, finance, operations, and understanding what the common goal is of whether it's your own business or whether you're working for a company. It's really important that everyone is on the same page. Otherwise, you'll never achieve that end goal. And it's through having that synergy that you can then push the boundaries and know where the limits are. And if you hit a challenge, I often find working together with the various different departments often overcomes those challenges and means that you can achieve what you're wanting to achieve. It might not be exactly how you initially thought it would be, but you will find a way. And that also results in often good results in the sense of that you achieve exactly what you set out to achieve because you know that everyone can do what you're wanting to do.
Okay, so if I could take something from that, the word communication comes to mind, and cross-departmental work. How do you deal with this? You work for MAF.
Yeah, thank you, Andres, for having me here. It's been a pleasure to be part of this discussion. So for me, if I had to share my view on it, I would say for an executive chef, when it comes to creativity, is a essential tool to keep your menu exciting and your planning experience fresh, right? Being in the operation, you're always going to have your operational pressure of cost controlling, or your staffing issues, your inventory issues, God knows what else, right? But then again, these are part of your routine job, right? They are not going anywhere. They always going to be there. So it's more about finding the balance, I would say, right? So if I had to share my view on the finding the balance part of it, I would say how I keep my creativity alive. I would say first thing is collaborating with the team. I think creativity doesn't has to come from one person especially. I always encourage my CDP or plant cook to like come up with some ideas you can share, and they all do bring something on table always in every my menu development. And then so it's about creating a culture where everyone share their thoughts, and then you may find something really interesting to add in the menu, or probably you end up finding a really exciting concept which can lead to a entirely different segment of your menu, I would say. So this is my view on it. Thank you.
Brilliant. So you and I'll do it like this. I'll pick up maybe a keyword from what you say. So we got communication. You mentioned culture as well. So that moves us nicely onto the second question, which is about strategies that you guys may use to ensure consistency of product is there, while still maintaining an element of creative output. I'll ask you that, Ali, first, because obviously you're in the entrepreneurial space rather than the corporate side of culinary. So, do you have any strategies to balance those two, consistency and creativity?
Well, first of all, thank you, Andre, for having me here today, and it's a pleasure to be with the panelists here. Regarding the creativity and consistency, it's one of the main aspects in my businesses. So I always keep on making sure the creativity is match the world standards, whatever is the recent trends, what's happening around, whatever the demand is asking for, trying to incorporate them. But when you're having multiple branches, so then the consistency comes in action. So in order to keep the consistency always equality, so we do our like central kitchens, we sign long-term deals with suppliers to make sure we always have that quality, same product, same standards all the time, all throughout the year. And it's very essential if you want to keep your quality always high, like make sure you okay. Okay. So if, as I was saying, so if you want to keep sure your consistency is always maintained throughout the year, basically with what's happening around the world, it gets a little tricky. Sometimes the items get shipped from abroad, like we source our ingredients from abroad, from US, Mexico, and so on. It gets tricky. So in order that we have a long-term relationship and strong contracts with our suppliers to ensure that we never run out of any of the ingredients we use. And then there is the way, like we use our central kitchens. And I suggest everyone, if they want to keep on the consistency, have a central kitchens and SOPs that you move on the steps as it's mentioned.
Okay, that's great. From a process perspective. How about you, Taryn?
Yeah, I think you touched on a lot there. From my perspective, I live in a different world. It's product development in terms of producing meals, and it's really important that when you're developing something that you have operations in mind. It has to be realistic, the meals that you're wanting, but at the same time, it's this yin and yang, this balance of pushing and driving forward creativity and quality and your vision, but working with operations and making sure that what you want to achieve is sustainable, because otherwise there's no point in launching something and 2 weeks later it's just not, operations can't handle it. So it's really important to set that up, do the training. Training is so important. And I think so often we can be guilty of implementing training, job done, move on, but actually doing training on a regular basis and reminding people we're all human beings, we fall into bad habits, we cut corners, it's human nature, it's not anything other than that. And it's just about reinforcing the standards, the SOPs, and what the culture and the value of what you're trying to achieve, so that when your customer's getting that meal, they can actually see, they know that it's been made in a certain way because the people have lived, breathed everything into that meal.
Yeah. Okay. So I will pick up maybe the word process here. Ali mentioned back-end processes to try and create that environment where we are keeping creativity alive while maintaining standards. You haven't heard anything from John yet. I promise you we'll just go on to ask him something. Some of you guys here in the room will have to balance not just the culinary element of working in a restaurant or in a hospitality unit. You're combining both management and culinary. So the question for you, John, is how do you, in your experience, balance those two, managing people while still having those creative juices flowing?
Before we answer that question, just a quick one on the previous. I think discipline when managing central kitchens teams is priority for me, in experience anyway. When it comes to dealing with teams, it's probably the biggest skill you're not taught. I think as an industry, we quickly move people from demi to CDP to junior soon. Before they know it, they're in charge of a kitchen and they're just not equipped to manage time, to manage teams. So they can be creative and create these wonderful dishes that taste amazing. But then when you get 20 on order, it's like watching the Alamo sink. And before you know it, you end up with a dog's dinner on a plate. So for me, I think it's key as we train the next generation of leaders that they are fully equipped to look at something not just from beauty and taste, but a full 360 degree of managing the kitchen and the teams and the product.
Yeah, absolutely. How about you, Devesh?
So it's about
How do we
manage the time
balance
and-
this management and creativity
Creativity.
in
All right.
such a
So-
high pressure environment?
So I'll understand. So you're asking how do I manage my time management while keep my creativity right? Is it?
your time and your people.
Yeah. All right. Exactly.
Correct.
So how I see this. So if you work in a well-established organization where the goals has been the planning and the goals has been set for the long term, right? So your time management is very, very important there. And so it's not that you are only dealing with your everyday demand in the kitchen or restaurant, but also everything you do to address that need to match with the long-term reputation of the company's goal and the consistency and everything. This is how I see it. And of course, I would say that to train your staff also help you to manage your time in the end, right? So if your team is trained, you will have less stress about your everyday operation because the guys know what to do, how to be done. So it will give you a room and time to be creative, and then you can again create more what a chef should be doing always, right? So that's how I say it.
Absolutely. I mean, there's something to be said. Obviously, it's a big cliche, but practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
But going back a little bit to what John was saying, systems management. There's always a big difference between doing a technical job and doing a managerial job, and you're spot on. This is part of the training that a lot of people they don't get it.
Yeah.
And management, it's a skill on its own.
I'd like to add something as well. It's also about using the technology what we have, right? So we live in technology-driven world, I would say, right? So if you have a tool which can help you to reduce the operational pressure and the stress, like if you have a automated inventory system, let's say, if you have automated a recipe management thing, again, it will take the half of the stress away. It will give you more room and time again to be more creative as a chef.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. Okay, so moving on. So, Ali, we were talking yesterday in the preparation for the panel about external pressures. I think, to be honest with this one, because we're doing pretty good with time, if Ali, John, Taryn, you want to add, that'll be great. What drives your creative processes when we're talking about external pressures?
Well, external pressures are almost everything these days. We face them every single day, especially the things that happen around the world at these days, which we see all. It affected us a lot. So in order to always not depend on those pressures, we try to localize the items as much as possible to source them from the local sources. Okay, we know that sometimes the quality is not the same as the one abroad, but then still we try to find the best ones, or even though if it's not available, we built it by scratch. I'll give you a simple instance. Like back in days, the sriracha sauce was out of stock. It was having some scarcity around the world in the US. So in order to don't compromise our quality, I started creating the sriracha from the scratch to match that flavor palette. I had the sample and I made it in order to be the same consistency in our recipes. So it's really it matters how you do it, how you localize it, and how you try to manage it. Or sometimes when the items are takes 3 months in delays. Like now there's an item I ordered, it takes 3 months shipment delay. They told us that instead of coming to Dubai, it went to India by mistake, the container. So you face this kind of thing, and the business cannot stop. The business is moving day and night, so you need to find an alternate. So then we went and we shipped it with first class from Emirates. Okay, just to make sure the consistency is there. So that's what I feel the external pressures these days are really too much. But when the lessons, the experience taught us how to overcome these pressures, external pressures, to make sure we are always on the consistency as always.
Which I guess, we're talking about creativity, not just from a culinary point of view.
Yeah.
We're talking about creativity in terms of process and how we overcome those adversities. Any input on that one from you, John?
How about the sriracha sauce? Are you selling it? Or?
Well, you didn't answer that, so maybe it's one for later. So just touching on what Ali said, I think it's really great example of when you have products that are maybe not socially recognized as being top quality, like local products. Things like cucumbers, tomatoes, and how you elevate them internally yourself to get it to the right quality, I guess. In terms of external pressures, it's not just from a product perspective, it's financially. How are you going to be creative with moving suppliers, getting the same quality? You have to be very creative to, offsetting your different suppliers. I come from a place where I prefer to have one supplier for everything. Until I came to the Middle East, and it was no, you have to battle against your suppliers to get the best prices, best quality. So now I have 2 or 3 suppliers for each department, I guess, dairy, meat. And even now I'm discovering new products, new suppliers all the time. So I think you've got to be really disciplined when you're looking at your suppliers list in terms of external pressures for that. The biggest one for me is the external pressure of the clients, the competition. It's how do you stay strong in the wave of adversity when you've got competitors opening every day in Dubai currently. It's just insane. How do you deal with complaints and not let it affect you and destroy your service? When you get food sent back, it's soul destroying. When you see a complaint, sometimes it's as simple as an undercooked steak. Sometimes it's the customer doesn't like it. And how do you not let that sink the whole team? Where if you're on the pass, if you're in charge of the kitchen, it's very easy to let it overcome you and get into this spiral of questioning everything you're doing. So it's really tough sometimes to stay strong in that, and it takes time, I think, a lot of time and a lot of experience to be able to stay strong and not have every complaint then force you to change the dish. Like I had the guys in the kitchen yesterday make a French toast mix and we couldn't figure out what was different. And in the end, we went back step by step, looking at the products that they used, and it turned out they used liquid eggs instead of whole eggs, and that affected the mix to a point where you couldn't see it on the dish, but you could only see it when you tasted it. So we're always reassessing products. If we do get a complaint, more than one, where it's like, okay, is it an issue with the product? Have we let the ball drop? So it's just it's an ongoing battle, I think.
So it's great to see how, talking about external pressures, external factors, we keep talking about adapting and creating. Now, you were talking about complaints. I love doing panels with John because everything you say leads me nicely to the next question, which is great. We're living in the world of social media and information easily accessible through the phone. How do you use feedback, whether if it's positive, negative, comes through social media or through a complaint in your restaurant? How do you use it to drive the creative process, more than the operational ones? How do we use it to drive the creative process? And I'll ask you first, Devesh.
Yeah. About the feedback, I would say it's really important to use feedback as a tool to get yourself better in terms of service of food, or like what I would say. First, I think is about understanding the feedback. Is it from the kitchen team? Is it from the manager? Is it from the guest? Right? Just to give an example, if a guest tries a dish and then he says that probably a bit of spice can elevate the dish, right? So either you can get upset about it, or you can just use that comment or suggestion to elevate the dish. Is not about the dish. Is probably you can take that idea and you use that idea for your some other dish or your new development, right? So feedback should be taken as a suggestion, which gives you a chance to elevate you more and find your small fault in your everyday operations. This is how I see the feedback, to be honest.
Okay, how about you, Ali?
Well, can you repeat the part?
Absolutely. So we were talking about feedback, and
Well,
we have social media. You're an entrepreneur. Your brands are heavily social media presenced. So how do you use feedback in terms of driving the creative process?
Well, we get feedback daily. Sometimes they compare us to a cafeteria, which is like, like you get shocked. But everyone's perspective is respected. Everyone's point of view is respected. And we take it into consideration. Why do compare us, for example, to a fast food chain? Or sometimes they say it's too salty. It depends on everyone's palate. But then we take the majority of their opinions and suggestions, and then we rework on the quality of our burgers or our food, like to see that how we can satisfy them better. Like one of the complaints that people keep on saying, people travel a lot around the world, especially us in the UAE and Dubai. People travel around the world and get new ideas and experience. So when they come back here, they want it in their favorite brand, restaurant. So they keep on saying, okay, I tried somewhere, it's better. That sauce is better. This sauce is better. So we try to learn them. So sometimes I go and source it from that specific country. Like if they like that specific brand, I bring it out. I try to make a better twist just to satisfy our customers. And well, not always we can satisfy everyone. Like out of every 100 customers, you'll find around 5 or 6 unsatisfied customers because of everyone's have their point of view. Like some of their points are pricing. Like for one of my fine dining brands, people keep on complaining about the price point. But then we started educating them why the price point is mentioned at that certain pricing strategy, because of the quality, because of the service, because of the location, because of the food. So once people start understanding, then it'll be easier to get in those comments, like, those negativity comments which comes in. And then, of course, in order to move forward, in any business, I believe that you always need to have a listening ears, and accept the like comments whatever give you, and then move forward.
So I guess we're working in a high pressure environment. I think what you were saying, Devesh, in terms of using feedback, not to lose the motivation, not to demoralize the chef who made it or the server who served it. But it's, I think, part of human nature to automatically or by default take it slightly personally. Now, before we started this panel, or we were getting ready, we were talking about the issue of mental health. We were talking about the well-being of the teams in a restaurant environment. And we were talking, and I don't know if you've seen it, the interview with Heston Blumenthal of a few days back, where he's coming back with some of the challenges of working in a Michelin star restaurant, and the pressures and the toll that it has taken on his physical and mental health. So, going to you, Taryn, how do we deal with well-being in high-pressure environments such as a kitchen?
Honestly, we're rubbish. And I think it's a part of who we are as chefs. What we do is not a job, it's a passion. And so that line between a job and lifestyle and home is so blurry because you just never get away from it. I mean, you go home and you have food, right? You go to friends, you with family. It's a emotive experience, and so I think we're so guilty of putting that ahead of ourselves and before ourselves. And I think, especially if you look back at the Marco Pierre Whites, the number of amazing chefs that we've lost because of mental health. We live in a day and age where we need to be putting ourselves first, and even if it's putting some time in your diary and you choose if it's going to be a hobby or going to the sport or going to do some exercise or going to the beach, or whether it's spending time with your family, you've got to find what that thing is that's going to drive you and allow you to reset, because ultimately it just means that your longevity is just shortened. Not just talking about your life, but your actual career path is shortened because you cannot sustain it. It's not physically possible. And we know, I mean, I'm sure we all know chefs who have worked in Michelin star restaurants and hotels that, I mean, the things that they do to keep going is just, it's not right.
How about you, John?
Okay, so like,
should everybody take a deep breath here? This is getting emotional.
No, I mean, like, I grew up in kitchens where the people who trained me were trained by the likes of Marco and Gordon, so it was super intense, pans flying around, and it was aggressive. And you learn to love it. It's amazing. But nowadays, people don't respond to that massively in the Middle East as well. UK is changing also as well massively, but it's about, I guess, giving people the space to find themselves in a different path. You don't have to be this uber aggressive, crazy person in the kitchen anymore. It's about guiding the teams, not just through food, through life challenges, through different coping mechanisms as well. For me, the best thing to switch off my mind is two things. One is going for a walk up the whole of Kite Beach, across to Sheikh Zayed and back. It's like 22.5 kilometers, sea waves, just switches your mind off. It's fresh sea air, away from work, leave my phone on the car. It's brilliant. Another one would be like having a massage. I know it sounds a bit crazy, but 2-hour massage, fall asleep, best sleep I get every month. So for me, these things just allow me to switch off, disconnect. Other sort of more new age, I guess, techniques things like breathing techniques that sort of, especially during service when it's busy, just like when you see these tickets piling up, just like these like deep breaths for a few seconds just to ground yourself, ground the team. Just take a moment. It's all fine. It's a very stressful environment in the kitchen. It's the pressure of wanting to feed everyone. Like you said earlier, you want everyone to be happy, but there's always going to be 5, even one person that's unhappy is one too many for me. And it's probably the same for everyone in the room as well, to be honest. But it's having the mental strength and getting used to it that you can't please everyone. Someone might come in and be like, I've had terrible news in the morning, and then they think their food is terrible because of that. They might have had an argument with the wife or husband, and all of a sudden everything's a disaster, you know? So you can't control everything. And I think the more we can pass down onto the new generation in terms of techniques of coping, especially, the better. Yeah.
And okay, go on.
Sorry, I've just got one more, something as well, I think, and it's not just to this industry, but when you're in a creative environment, you're actually not as effective when you're burnt out. You're not as creative when you're burnt out. So it's actually really important that we do allow ourselves that time, because otherwise you're not as efficient.
One more thing, sorry. Just like it was a stigma.
Absolutely, we have time, so
We've got loads of time. Growing up, it was a stigma to sort of show any weakness, right? Any emotions in the kitchen other than fully focused on work. And I think the more we can do to change that, the guys over at the DCC, the Chefs Collective, James Knapp Pacheco, Troy Payne, Robert Stevens, Shane Bourne, they're doing loads. They won an award recently for mental health in the industry. They do fantastic. The Burnt Chef Project we mentioned earlier. There's loads of organisations that deal with this head on, and seeing that whole Heston interview was like shocking. It's like looking into the future for a lot of people, probably. I think seeing how burnt out he got, and he's widely recognised as one of the top chefs of his generation. So yeah, that's it.
okay, Ali.
Well, as a restaurateur and a chef, I'll just give you an example that it happened to me in a very bad way, I'll say. When first I opened one of my new concepts, the fine dining one, it was for the first time I was introducing a dry aged burgers. So people usually are used to their patties. After receiving a lot of negative feedbacks, I reached to a level that I was having nightmares for absolutely 1 month back to back. I'm falling from the heights. It was that I consulted to a psychologist. I was losing my mental health the very bad way. Every time I keep on receiving Google reviews, bad food, because they were not educated. So I started learning how to do yoga to get my mental health back, and then started working at that restaurant for 1 month personally on the front of the house to keep on explaining to the people how's the food, what is it about, educate them about what we are serving. And then that's the time when slowly people started to understand and accept the new changes that they are introduced to them, to their normal food routine habits. So it's very important, as the chef said, regarding your mental health, we are also humans. We are we are not robots. We are humans, and we have emotions. But when people don't appreciate what we created, so it affects us. And since I'm a restaurateur, the business part of the point as well, the business also was pressuring. The sales are zero. So you need to always consider ourselves first in order to be more productive for the community.
Yes,
A small thing as well.
yeah, go ahead, please.
Everyone is doing anyway. So I would like to touch a different side of it, not exactly what everyone is talking, right?
Sure.
So I remember my time when I was in my initial state of starting as a chef, right? I'm talking about almost 10 to 12 years ago, the kitchen culture now and kitchen culture what I used to have when I had my chef, I don't see chef throwing pans anymore, right? So if I look back, I was really mentally stressed when every day I was told that how bad you are. Yes, I was, right? But did that maybe polish me well, which I am here now? Maybe yes as well, right? But it doesn't tell that what I've been through was the right thing, but it also tells you that to reach to some point where you're so successful, you may have to go through some hard times, which also may include how you've been dealt as a junior also.
Okay, so I mean, I come from a front of house background as an operator rather than a back of house. I don't know if it shows, but
The style shows.
well, thank you.
And the suit as well.
Thank you very much. So I would say that probably working in the kitchen or working in a particular environment in hospitality, food and beverage, it's almost like the army to some extent, right? We're building people to be tough, which on one hand, it may form, like you were saying, Devesh, it may give you some kind of formation and that desire to maintain certain standards. In the other end, I guess, like you were saying, Ali, we're human, right? And we have some basic needs that we need to meet, regardless of whether we're working in a kitchen or on the floor or at reception or whatever it is. It sounds a little bit cliche, but, it goes a little bit against the way we operate, having enough sleep, having downtime, drinking enough water, all this kind of stuff that are probably not top of mind when we're working. But with that in mind, and it just popped into my head, working with the new generation. So we're now welcoming Generation Z to the equation of building teams in hospitality, right? Completely different mindset, completely different way of looking at things. How are we going to deal with them, especially now? We are going into innovation, the pressures of keeping the creative juices flowing, discipline, mental health, external factors. How are we going to balance all that? So I just added the generational bit to the question.
There we go.
I have John's name here. So
Gen Z, really?
John.
Was that really the question?
Absolutely. So how do we manage, innovation and pressure? How do we balance those two? I've added the Generation C there because it's something that I think is going to be affecting everybody moving forward. So yeah.
I'm not sure if it's a Gen Z related issue. I think it's more of a modern mentality that you see a lot in Dubai and see a lot in the kitchens. Specifically, when you say Gen Z, it brings up, there was a Simon Sinek and a Stephen Bartlett podcast where they were talking about Gen Z a lot and how they're not as resilient to workplace changes and they're very likely to move rather than go through conflict, which is obviously happens in kitchens every second of every day. They're more likely to move jobs and run away from conflict. But that's, for me, it just resonates with the culture of moving jobs in Dubai every second. I'm sure everyone's losing good people to other places for very little difference in terms of salary, which obviously impacts the operations massively. You have to retrain people, train our mentality of each individual establishment into the new team. So for me, it's not necessarily about the Gen Z generation. What makes them different in reality? What do you think makes them different?
I mean, it's definitely a different outlook in life, and like you say, this desire of making an impact and working for something that has meaning, it is very difficult to pin down. In an event a few weeks ago, Chief of Jumeirah was saying that in the high luxury properties, turnover is about 60%. Exactly what you say, right? Young, ambitious, completely different mindset, moving from place to place, looking for something that, in a few years we will know if they found it or not, right? But then, how do we build long-lasting teams where we can actually continue to drive creativity and maintain standards? I think that was the original question. There you go.
It was.
So I'm feeding you back into it. So how do we do it?
I think we've touched on it in various questions in terms of building their teams through different approaches. I think we've all bringing the discipline, the SOPs. Like, I remember my recipes when I first started out as a commie were just ingredients and weights, and that was it. Whereas it's been developed over the years from my side through working in central kitchens, restaurants, different skill levels as well. So now the last sort of version of the recipe was pictures on there. It was simplified language. It was also a taste profile. So a key thing that I think we overlook when we're training chefs is building palates of the chefs. We're not just teaching them to taste something to say, yeah, it will taste like, I don't know, a beurre blanc. What should you taste first, second, third? What is the viscosity of the sauce? Really drilling down into the different levels to map out what a sauce should be, or a dressing, or whatever, a cake, so that you're given the tools. You're mapping out what is essentially in everyone's minds up here on paper, so anyone can follow it. But I watched the Marco Pierre White video the other day, and he was like, well, a recipe is just a guide. It's how you execute it, right? Famously, I hope there's no one French here, no offense if you are, it's a positive thing I'm about to say. My old pastry chef was French, and he would always leave errors in recipes, so that if you stole recipes from him, you can't make it. But if you've been trained by him, by his hand, he tells you the real way. And removing that mentality, the old mentality of hiding things. We want to be passing down not just recipes, but also coping mechanisms and life skills to the younger generation. Like, you're never too old to learn anything, is what I think in general in life.
And it sounds to me that probably the next chapter for panels like this one would be how we are incorporating technology, which I think is a big one at the moment, to drive the creative process, to maintain standards, to deal with external problems, etc., etc. We have 5 minutes left on our panel, and I was wondering if anybody in the audience would like to add something or ask something to this very talented panel of chefs that we have here today.
We were all young. We all didn't know where we're going, what we're doing, how we're getting there. Why should we change our operations to fit them? Because when we went in as a chef at a young age, they didn't change their operations to fit their feelings or their attitude or their seeing in life. So what made the difference between us 20, 30 years back and them today?
Any of you would like to tackle that one?
You want to ask?
Great question, by the way. Great question. Thank you so much.
It is. I don't think that how we were all trained or what we experienced was necessarily right. And I think that the world is a very different place, and we have to adapt and evolve. Whether we like it or not, these kids are exposed to totally different upbringings to what your kids are being exposed to. And they don't have the same skill set in many ways. I don't need to go and learn something, I'll just Google it. And I think if we don't adapt, then we'll lose a whole generation of potential because we failed them to realize that actually we're the dinosaurs now. We have to change. We have to adapt.
But the foundations of cooking always stay the same. That basics will never change. To fry egg is to fry egg. So if that has not been given to them today because of their feelings,
I feel like you got some issues.
No, but the robots will take over if we don't teach them good. I believe if we don't teach them,
because I'm looking at this, from a stage of from the hotel schools. What they're teaching at hotel school now and what we did at hotel schools are very different. There's no more pressure on them. There's no nothing on them. It's very relaxed, very turned down. I agree. We should not have any violence, any aggression, anything. But the foundations of the learning should be still the same. You should be learning how to make a sauce, a brown sauce, a white sauce, all the basics has to be there. And I think this is sometimes we lose that because we're trying to agree to a system.
I think for me, it's two levels. Technically, we should be teaching the new generation everything. So I think there's a proportion of restaurants in the world, Dubai, it happens everywhere, where if you have chicken breast on the menu, the process is just focused on that chicken breast. It's not, okay, let's get the whole chicken in, debone it, crown it, you confit the legs, do a terrine with this. That's a technical element. For me, 100%, we should be going above and beyond to teach the new generation these elements. Hollandaise, okay, when I was being taught Hollandaise, you do it by hand, right? To be honest, I do it in a RoboCube because it's more stable. And I found that over the years, right? But you still teach them, well, this is how you do it by hand. Things like thermal mixes in pastry. For me, in a restaurant, a thermal mix is, I love it like a child, to be honest. Put a creme patisserie in there, lemon curd, pâte de fruits. There's so many things you can just put in there and walk away. But you still teach them how to do it, right? But it's not in that highly pressured environment where you see people, when they put under that pressure, they wilt and they're not learning. In my experience, and I'm no angel in the kitchen even nowadays, but still, it's trying to create an environment where when you're teaching them, to me, there's two separate parts as well in the kitchen. There's service and there's pre-service and post-service. What happens in service, you're not going to be like, oh, they're there, I need this in 5 minutes. You're like, get me it on the pass, I need it in 5 minutes. Whereas before that and after that, it's a completely different approach. It's given time and one-on-one training and coaching, and if it's once, twice, 3, 4, 5 times, it doesn't matter. I try and find different ways. If someone's not getting something, I take it personally and find a different way to try and train them 2, 3, 4 times. And if I'm still struggling to try and train them on something, I'll ask people that I know, man, the guys in my team aren't understanding this. What do you do? And I think that's my approach to it anyway.
So I think one thing is the technical element, which I think we're all in agreement, absolutely. Is how we adapt our environment. Now, very quickly, we have very little time. We had a second question. I don't know if we can...
Actually, I started working my career in F&B or in culinary for past 13 years. And what I understand is it's not in the environment that teaches me where I am right now. It's the way I manage things personally, because when I grow up, it mixes my emotion in the environment which is pressured past 10, 13 years ago, where we normally not relying to Thermomix, as you said earlier. We do manual things, but it affects like the family culture as well. It's not only the culinary side, but it affects the way where our parents let us grow as a person and handle things personally. Working in a culinary for 13 years, I understand that it's really pressure. Like the expectation of my superior, and now I'm in a position to give that pressure, but I don't carry it with me. I learn from it and I can handle it well. When I see mistakes from my subordinates, like my CDPs who couldn't able to understand me, then I just need to repeat the way I wanted to be executed as a chef and person.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our panel. Thank you, John, Taryn, Ali, Devesh, and thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed today's event. It's absolutely packed with great talks and panels, not just here, in the other room. I would say this is the VIP room. So lovely to see you guys, and have a great day.
Thank you, Mr. Andres. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Mr. Andres, Chef Ali Yazdi, Chef Devesh, Chef John, and Chef Terry. Thank you.